Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. We're here in Indianapolis, Indiana. Indianapolis is the capital of Indiana, also its largest city. And just a few miles from where I'm sitting is a little tiny place called Speedway, Indiana. And Speedway, interestingly, hosts an auto race every year and has done so in most years since 1911, called the Indianapolis 500-mile race, or commonly known as the Indianapolis 500 or just the Indy 500. But it doesn't actually take place in Indianapolis, it's in Speedway. I think Speedway is actually completely surrounded by the city of Indianapolis, so it's like this little enclave. But anyway, Indy 500 takes place here every year on Memorial Day weekend. And, even if you're not mildly interested in auto racing, you probably know something about the Indianapolis 500. And I kind of guess it first came into my consciousness when Mario Andretti won it in 1969. And I've kind of paid attention more in some years than others. But there's been, a lot of people that have won this race multiple times. Of course, there's only one 5-time winner of the race, and that, of course, is Ricky Bobby. He's now retired, and he had a huge career in NASCAR, too. I talked about it when I was down by Talladega Super Speedway one time. But, and then 4 guys have won it 4 times. And that list is, let me think, A.J. Foyt, Al Unser Sr., Rick Mears, and I believe the most recent winner, I think he won last year, Helio Castroneves, who is, even if he hadn't won 4 times, I think he would still be considered cool because I believe he's married to Ashley Judd. So, those are your 4-time winners. By the way, Al Unser Jr. has won the race 2 times, and Al Jr.'s uncle and Al Sr.'s brother, Bobby, who passed away not too long ago, won it 3 times. So, if you take the Unsers out of the equation, people with the last name of Unser, then only 20 other people have ever won that race. So I think that's right. I think that math is right. So anyway, it's just it's one of those quote sporting events that's kind of like the Super Bowl, right? It's a spectacle. It's even if you're not like a huge fan of the sport, going at least once to it is something very memorable, kind of like the Kentucky Derby or whatever. So anyway, that's where we are today. We're picking up a load here, and then we're going out to the West Coast with it. So I wanted to talk about something that's actually was triggered in my mind by somebody that commented on one of my other videos, and I apologize, I don't know who the commenter was, or I can't remember, and I can't even remember which video it was, but his comment definitely stuck in my mind. And so he said that he had completed CDL school, so he is a CDL holder, but he wasn't sure which company to sign on with. And I wanted to kind of address that because I did reply to his comment. I said, look, whoever you go to, and I'm not a super prime recruiter. I mean, if somebody really wants to come to Prime and they say, hey Terry, what's your driver code, I'll give it to them, because it's kind of free money if they come. But I think companies have to speak for themselves, meaning the people have to do the research and determine what the best fit for them is. For example, and just kind of an analogy to this is Harvard's a really good university, but it's not the right school for each person that's going to go to college. It's just like schools need to be a good fit when you're paying for them. You have a CDL, so you have some power, but you want to make sure that the company you go to is going to be a good fit for you. Now, anybody who has a CDL but has never really driven over the road needs to go through some training. Not ought to, needs to. And I'll tell you why. Because if you think about the CDL test, and lots of people on here have talked about their CDL prep and testing experience, you know that there are 1,000 things that we do as part of this job that are not tested, meaning that the CDL acquisition process, for lack of a better term, or what CDL schools teach, is not going to address those. And it really shouldn't, and I'll tell you why. I have a doubles and triples endorsement, and I used to work at an LTL company, so I know how to break and hook sets of pups. However, I don't do it on a daily basis anymore. I used to do it every single night from like midnight till 9 a.m. or whatever. I don't do that anymore. But if I was running a CDL school, I also wouldn't teach that, because why teach something that's not going to be tested and people may never use? Because since I left Estes Trucking, I've never touched a pup. I've never had any reason to, get a dolly hooked up to the back of one pup and back under another pup. I just don't do that. So I don't have to worry about whether I got an extra set of dummy glad hands or anything, because it's not part of my life. Conversely, I've never hooked up to a tanker. I don't know jack about pumping out a tanker. Why would I want to learn that in CDL school? So there are a gazillion skills that we have, that we acquire in training, that we don't need to get a CDL, and you wouldn't expect to be taught in a CDL class. So my advice here is find a company that has a solid training program. Now, what does solid mean? And the answer is, it depends on who you are. But as a minimum, you should be driving thousands of miles with an experienced CDL holder sitting beside you, and certainly being around you. The first time you hook or unhook, or drop or hook a trailer, you shouldn't be out there by yourself. And probably the second or third or fifth time, it might not be a good idea for you to be out there by yourself, right? Because there's a mental checklist that you need to go through when you do that, to do it safely. I'm sitting in front of a trailer that I've already dropped. I'm just waiting to hook up to one that gets loaded. But like when I backed into this parking spot, for example, I went through a mental checklist that I didn't learn in CDL school. I learned by being out here and having this experience and learning from my trainers. And then I went through another mental checklist when I pulled the brakes, because it starts right there, and all the things I did to just successfully drop an empty trailer, because you can do this wrong. And so if you've been to a CDL school and you have your license, you have power, but you don't really have a lot of knowledge. And if you think just because somebody is willing to hire you and let you drive one of their trucks doesn't mean you should do it. It's kind of like, there's lots of things you can do, but it doesn't mean you should do. And driving a semi with no experience, no on the road training, no on the job training, is a bad idea. Why is it a bad idea? Because you're going to screw something up. You're going to get yourself hurt. You're going to get somebody else hurt. You're going to get in a wreck. And all that money that you paid for that CDL school, because that's the other part, right? Like, you kind of own your CDL. You don't owe anybody time. but you paid a lot of money to get something that the government or a court of law will take away from you that fast. And it doesn't take much. It's you know, a lot of times courts are and, you know, police or DOT are really like, they don't give you any breaks. They don't care that you're new to this and that you didn't know something. Everybody that's on the road is expected to know how to safely operate. So, what do you look for in a training program? Well, first of all, it needs to be long enough for you to get the basics. So it's not to say that a training program that lasts 30 days or 30,000 miles or 30 loads or whatever the metric is going to make you like super bad, super driver, you know. No, it's only going to make you proficient. And really, what it needs to make you is aware of what you don't know and put you in a position where you're like, you know, we did that while I was in training, and I know that that is going to be hard and it's or it's going to be dangerous. And so I really need to take my time, and I might need to call my trainer and or you know enough to talk to another driver to say, hey, how do I do X? And here's the reason. I was at a load, I was picking up a load one day in Cincinnati, and this is not when I was at Prime. I think I was at Schugle at the time. And this dude comes over, and I'll be candid, he did not speak much English. But he you know, he asked me if I can help him, basically. I understood that he needed help. Well, it turned out that they told us when we backed into the stock, oh, just crank down your landing gear and get out from under your trailer. And so this guy was able to do that, but because when he pulled out, right, you could pull out from under a trailer, but it doesn't mean when you go to get back under it that it's just going to be seated properly on the skid plate, or that it's going to be lined up or anything. In fact, you can get out from under it, and you may go to back underneath it, and the kingpin go completely over your skid plate. And so what had happened is this guy backed under and basically pinned the kingpin on top of the skid plate, and he couldn't figure out what to do about it. And the reason he couldn't figure out what to do about it is because nobody had trained him. He didn't understand like how to fix that. He didn't understand that he could lower his drop the air out of his bags basically and lower his drives. And he didn't understand how to get things lined up so that once he pulled on that apron, there was no light showing between the apron and the skid plate. Now, that's really basic stuff, but it's not basic if you've never been trained on it. And so if you're looking at a trucking company, first thing is you want to understand how much they train you. And I'm going to tell you another quick story that illustrates this. So this is when I think I still was at night, and I was at the Loves in Williams, Arizona, and I was backed into a spot. It was daytime, kind of afternoon. I had just gotten there, and this dude pulls up from a trucking company, and I won't say the name of the company, but they're out of Kansas City, and they're pretty good size. Mostly, I think they do all temp control and refrigerated trailers. And he pulls up and he stops and he comes over to my truck and he says, hey man, can you help me back into these spots? And I looked over and there's like 4 open spots next to me. So I was like, you can't mess it up. And he's like, no man. He goes, I was on a trainer's truck for I think it was something like 80 hours, or it was in hours, right? It was like a weird equation, but it was like, it was like 7 to 10 days or something, right? And he said, I went to a CDL school, and turns out this guy was former Navy and had a career in something else, like he was a contractor. And so then when his son got old enough, his son had gotten a CDL, and his plan was to get a CDL and drive with his son as a team at DOT. And that didn't work out, so he gets his CDL and he goes to this company, and they're like, yeah, you got to ride with this driver for like 360 hours, or I don't know what it was, but it was not a long time. And it didn't matter what you were doing, it was hours. So he did, but he was like, I never got to do anything. He said, all I did was run the interstate, because we went back and forth from California to the East Coast, and then I was finished, and so I said, yeah, man, I'll help you. So I kind of explained some of and I'm a better backer than I was then, but I kind of explained some of the things I did, and what I looked for, and how I kind of tried to like gauge where the trailer was going to end up and stuff, and we had a nice conversation. But I realized that even though, he was licensed to drive a truck, but he had zero confidence in his ability to back that thing. And so training is the most important thing. Now, the other equation though is you want to go to a company that appreciates the fact that you already have a CDL, right? They need to pay you because you got a CDL. Now, what that number is, I don't know. But for instance, when I was at night, and this is 3 years ago, and I had my CDL and I was riding with the trainer, I got paid $500 a week. And I had to be on the truck for 28 days. That was, I felt like it was enough time. My trainer felt like it was enough time for me. But it might not be enough time for everybody. I wanted to get off his truck and make more money. At Prime, right now, you have to be on the truck for 30,000 miles. Now, Paul's doing 40,000 because of this rule about new hires. And by the way, when we get done with this trip, he'll have like 6,000 miles left to do. But Prime pays $900 a week. I think that the answer to what you should be making is somewhere along in that range. And the reason I say that is not to promote Prime, but just to say that's the market, right? That's the market in this environment. Is 30,000 miles the right number? I don't know. I think it's a good number, and I think you do have to have a metric, right? You do have to say, okay, here's our standard. The standard used to be 50 at Prime. 50 is a lot of miles, by the way, but that was probably okay for some people. Is 30 too few? That's a question that each individual would have to answer, but you're not going to know till you get there. And so what I think is important is, if you got a CDL, you have something valuable. But if you need to understand that when you have something valuable, you have to safeguard it. You have to protect it. The best way to safeguard and protect what you already earned is by getting trained by somebody that values their CDL. So don't go to a company where they'll put you with somebody else that just got their CDL a week ago, CRST. Don't go to a company where they'll let somebody that's had a CDL for like 40 minutes become a CDL trainer. You can tell when it's kind of sketchy, right? Like, use your brain. If you go to a place where the person who's driving has been doing it like 15 minutes longer than you, and they're somehow the trainer, that's not a place to be. And by the way, do not, if you just happen to have stumbled into a situation where that's where you find yourself, get out. Why? Because really it's not safe for you. But second of all, you're not going to get the training you need. But because you have a CDL, you can walk away from any employer. and still get hired quickly at somebody else. There's no such thing as job hopping in this industry, right? I mean, I guess there is, but nobody cares. As long as you didn't put a truck in the ditch, you don't have a CSA score, and you're not a freaking crackhead, you're going to get a job, and you're going to be welcome at trucking companies. But they need to respect you enough to say, hey, we acknowledge you got a CDL and we want you, but we still have to make sure that you're trained and ready to go solo on your own. If they don't care enough about your license to train you properly and give you all the help you need, then you shouldn't care enough about them to want to work there. And again, they should pay you pretty well. You shouldn't be out riding as like a second seat for like 8 cents a mile or some bull crap when you're still driving full shifts. You know, you should be getting good wages. $900 a week is, what is that? It's about $48 a year, I guess. That's a decent starting wage for a lot of jobs. It respects the fact that people have CDLs, but it also acknowledges the fact that they're not yet fully trained. Because if you're fully trained, and I've heard people say different things, but I think if you're fully trained, as you know, and you've got tens of thousands of miles, maybe not hundreds of thousands, but tens of thousands of miles under your belt, you probably should be making in the 50s. So look for that. Don't get in with a bad company that taints your record or allows you to fall into a trap that harms your resume. So anyway, if you got any questions, reach out. I'm happy to talk about more specific stuff with Prime, or even what I learned at night and what I've seen at other places that I wouldn't recommend. And all of this information that I have about other places is based on firsthand information that was provided to me by people I knew at other companies. Like when I mentioned CRST, you know, I've talked to people that started out their careers there more than once. There are a lot of other companies that fall into that category. There are a lot of fly-by-night places that they'll hire you right out of school, give you the keys to a truck, and then send you on a cross-country trip and expect you to just figure stuff out. And this is not, you know, there's only so many YouTube videos you can watch and get your load delivered on time. So, you know, go to a place where people are going to train you. And even if you're at a place that has good training programs, like I think Knight has a pretty good training program. I think, of course, Prime has a good training program. There are lots of companies out there that do. If you're still not satisfied, then go over your trainer's head, go to some supervisor and get a different trainer, get a better trainer, you know, because at that point you're still a customer. So you're still the consumer of the product that's being sold. So anyway, I hope that helps some people. I hope that empowers some people. And you know, if you do decide to come to Prime, I think it's a great company. It has a good training program. As far as like truck availability, I'm not sure that's not a problem with a lot of companies, unless they put you in a truck that's already got like 500,000 miles on it or something like that. But anyway, I hope that was helpful, and be safe out there. We'll catch up to you. We'll let you know what we're doing, and we'll see you next time. Bye.